Hey, it's Jess, back with another Misfit Makers Besties tutorial. Can't wait to get started with this cutie this week. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. We upload new videos every Wednesday and Friday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Also, check out our Facebook group, Misfit Makers, and if you want to take your business to the next level, check out our mentorship group, Misfit Makers Besties. Okay, today we're going to start out with a junior from the Steel Magnolia, and I already have my bottom taped off, ready to be prepped. I have been seeing these cute little cartoon cupcakes, cartoon cakes, all over Instagram lately. If you haven't seen them, just type in cartoon cakes and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. They are so cute, and I was like, let's turn this into a cup. So what I did here was I took some of my Pop of Color Cool White and I mixed in just a little bit of yellow acrylic paint. The reason I'm not just using just acrylic paint is because yellow is such a translucent color that it would take several coats to get good coverage. If you mix a little bit of white paint in there, one coat should do the trick. After you get your base coat on there, you're going to want to dry that up really good with a heat gun. Now it's time to glitter. Today I'm using CCDIY's UV resin as my adhesive, and if you've never used UV resin as your adhesive before, you don't need a lot. It's very similar to the epoxy method. A little bit goes a long way. You do not need it dripping off your cup. After we get that all around our cup, then it is time to glitter. Today the color I'm using is St. Jude. It's a gorgeous yellow from Peachy Olive, which I will link all of the supplies down below. I really love this yellow because even if your paint is a little streaky, this color it's so vibrant and the coverage on it is amazing, especially for a yellow. Most yellows I have to do 2 coats. With St. Jude, I mean, 1 and she's done. After we glitter her up, we're going to remove that painter's tape before we stick it underneath our UV light. Don't forget this step, because if you accidentally cure it with that tape on, you're going to have troubles removing that tape. 3 or 4 minutes with the light that I'm using should be fine, and we're going to go in and do a layer of UV resin on top of our glitter. The reason for this is so when we move on to our bottom color, our next color, that yellow doesn't shift. And especially with using a darker glitter color at the bottom, we don't want that glitter moving to our yellow and contaminating our yellow. So nice thin coat on top, same steps, remove that tape and then stick it underneath our light for about 3 minutes. Now this light that I'm using you can find on my Amazon shop. I will link it down below. It is a very strong light. I've noticed the longer I have the light on, the stronger it gets too. So when you first have it on, if you're using it for the first time for that day, it might take 4 to 5 minutes to completely cure a thick coat of UV resin, but after it warms up, like 2 minutes and your cup's cured. I promise. These lights are amazing. Be careful that you don't have your bottle of UV close to your lamp because it will cure your entire bottle. All right, we're going to repeat all of the same steps for our bottom color now. So I'm going in with my Ocean Deep chalk paint, Pop of Color from CCDIY. We're going to give her a nice good base coat, dry it up with my heat gun, go in with a thin coat, a very small amount of UV resin, and then we're ready to glitter again. This next glitter color I'm using is Smurfette, also from Peachy Olive, and it's the perfect blue. I love this blue. I actually use this for my beach cups too, just because it's, I mean, you can see here that shine. Oh, it's gorgeous. Repeat those steps again. We're going to tap off all the excess glitter, and then we are going to do a coat of UV resin on top of just the blue to really seal that glitter in. After that is sealed, then I went ahead and did a coat of UV resin over the entire thing. I did not sand yet. I just went ahead and did one more coat of UV resin. Then after that, you're going to cure it. Then you can do a light sand. You don't want to sand after just having one thin coat of UV resin over your cup, because you're still going to have raw glitter exposed, and really that first layer of UV resin is just sealing that glitter in. It's not like a heavy coat. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. But after you have that second coat of UV resin over the entire cup, then I want you to go in and clean up your rims, sand that rim really good, and then do a light sanding over the entire tumbler. Then we will be ready for our decals. So I Googled sprinkle SVGs, and I just found some sprinkles that looked like sprinkles, didn't look like pills, and I pulled them into my silhouette and I made an offset. So again, this is supposed to be like a cartoon cake, so everything is outlined in black. So I wanted my offset to be black, and then I just picked some fun colors. I have my orange, yellow, pink, and blue here. This is all 651 vinyl from Vinyl Fun for Everyone, which again, I will link down below along with our discount code. Check her out. She has all kinds of goodies. If you guys are like into sublimation a lot, she has so many things for sublimation, but much more. Vinyl, glitter, blanks, really, you name it, she carries it. So here you can see I'm applying my sprinkles onto my offset here, and we're just going to do this all around the cup. You can add as many sprinkles as you'd like, or if there's something else, you know, polka dots or a different type of design, feel free. Use your imagination and be creative. Once you're happy with all of your decals, we are then going to go in and do another coat of UV resin. Now here, if you don't want to waste your UV resin and you don't necessarily need to move on to the next step right away, you can go in and just do a coat of epoxy. So I went in and did a coat of UV resin, cured that up, and then we are ready to move on to the next step. So here I'm using my Artisan marker. You can find them on Amazon. They come in a huge pack, huge variety pack of really any color that you possibly could want or need. And we are going to trim up our rim, and then we're going to do the same thing right where our blue and our yellow glitter meet. Again, if you look up cartoon cakes, everything's outlined in black. So that's kind of the look I'm going for. Now here at the bottom, I want this to be like my cupcake liner. So you can see I started just adding small little black lines, but then after I started looking at it, I was like, I want a bunch of different lines on there. So I went in and just did a bunch of lines to make it look like a cupcake liner. All right, after you get all of that on, I went in and did another thin coat of UV resin to seal all of our marker lines up and those decals. Now I'm ready to add my drip. And if you noticed, I kept my sprinkles down towards the bottom of my cup because in my mind, I knew I was going to add a drip, and there was no point of adding the sprinkles towards the top because I would just cover them up. Here I'm mixing 30 ml of Fast Set Epoxy by CCDIY, and I added a little bit of Rick's Mix, which is a colorant, an additive, to add to your epoxy to make it a different color. Here I'm using just the white, and I'm also using cornstarch. Cornstarch is a thickener. Normally I would use Nice and Thick from CCDIY, but I am all out because I run through that stuff like water. So cornstarch is always my backup. Now, it's always best to use a product that is meant for doing whatever you're doing. So the Nice and Thick from CCDIY, it's meant to be added to epoxy. So it's going to work like it is supposed to work. It's going to thicken that epoxy up. Cornstarch is obviously not meant to be added to epoxy. It doesn't mean you can't add it, but that's not why that's not why it was created. So it's not going to work as well, but it still gets the job done. So we are just going to keep adding it and adding it and adding it until we get the consistency that we like, which you want it nice and thick. I always add a little bit to the side of my cup before adding it to my tumbler, and if it runs down the side of my cup too fast, then I know it's not ready. Here you see I start adding just a small amount on the end of my popsicle stick, and we are creating that barrier all the way around our rim. Once we get it all the way around our rim, I will then go in and make some spots thicker, some spots not as long, because I want it to look as close as possible to icing on a cake. Again, make sure that you're just picking up a really small amount. If you make your sections too thick before that epoxy has time to cure, then it will drip really fast down your tumbler and you will get like those teardrop looks. Now, in some cases that might be the look you're going for. Here, I wanted it to be more natural and thick, like, you know, like icing on a cake. So once you are all finished with adding your drip to your cup, just keep an eye on it. If you do have any bubbles, you can just pop those with your heat gun as they rise to the top. And this is something I wouldn't walk away. I would keep an eye on it for about 10 minutes or so until it cures and you know it's not going to move anywhere. You can also stick it on your turner and just let it turn, and that way you don't have to worry about your drips dripping down any longer than you want them. So after my drip is fully cured, about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I then am going to go in with my Arteza marker again, and we're going to outline our drip. Now this is the part where I really saw it coming together. I was like, okay, this looks like a cartoon cake. I was really happy with the way my drip looked. It almost looks like there's spots where, I don't know, like icing on a cake. It's not perfect. If you notice and you look at my drip, like some spots almost look clumpy, isn't the word, but not like completely smooth. And I was like, that, I love it. I love it. This marker I'm using here is a Pascal marker, and it just has a finer point. So I was switching back and forth in between the two. The final step I did was I took some white acrylic paint and I just added some very thin lines. Again, this is a very popular technique in those pop cakes and those cartoon cakes. So just another element that I thought would really bring this cup together. My final step is adding I did go in with a layer of CCDIY resin first, but then my final step was to go in with my medium viscosity epoxy from CCDIY and do a final coat of epoxy over the entire cup. I did end up making a little topper for this cutie too. It was a very simple. I just used Sculpey clay and rolled it out like a snake, baked it, painted it white, and then I did the same thing to the topper. I used those markers to make those lines, added a cherry on top, and I thought it was like the perfect touch. So I can't wait to see your creations. I hope this inspired you to make your own pop cake tumbler or your cartoon tumbler. And if it did, make sure you tag us in your creations. We love seeing them. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and voila!